What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be taking a deep look at the new GDL Havoc launcher in the special category in Black Ops 7. This is the reward for completing all of the weekly challenges for this week. I know I'm getting to this a little bit late, but that's because this also launched aside a brand new season. And without further ado, let's dive right into this with the basics. And that is, by default, this launcher fires a projectile that will stick to surfaces but not players, and it's remote detonated. So you fire this like normal, you just hit the regular shoot button to fire it, and then once it sticks, you can hit the detonate button, which is the same button as aiming down sight, so you can't aim down sight with this either, and that will detonate any projectiles that you have currently out and active. And what that also means is you can fire multiple projectiles and stick them to various surfaces, and then detonate all of them at once. Now, alternatively, we have access to the Prestige attachment, and we're going to be comparing these side by side because this gives you a slightly different style of ammo with this. In this case, with the Prestige ammo, it doesn't stick to surfaces. It'll actually bounce off surfaces. However, just like with the previous one, this one is remote detonated. And there are several other differences, and that's what we're going to be going through in today's video. But let's just dive right into the actual power of this, starting it off with the base ammo if you're not using the Prestige attachment. With this, it has quite a short maximum damage radius for its splash damage, and in this radius, it will be a one-hit kill against a non-flak jacket user, so it's dealing at least 100 damage, and the radius on this is roughly 1.5 meters, so they have to be practically standing right on top of it for this to kill them in one hit, and it won't kill them in one hit if they're using flak jacket. However, it's also worth noting, if you direct impact somebody with this, while it doesn't stick to them, it will deal 34 damage, meaning if you hit a flak jacket user directly and then immediately detonate it, and they're still within that 1.5 meter radius when it detonates, then it can kill a flak jacket user with just one shot. As for the next splash damage range, this extends out to about 3.6 meters, and you're going to be dealing 60 damage, meaning if you were to fire two of these projectiles out and maybe set a trap, you can still kill a non-flak jacket user with one detonation here within 3.6 meters. Although against flak jacket, you're only dealing 39 damage, so you would need 3 projectiles going off within 3.6 meters of them. And then finally, our maximum splash damage range is actually pretty big. It's around 7 meters. That's a solid radius for an explosion. And at this point, you will be dealing 34 damage to a non-flak jacket user and 22 damage to a flak jacket user. So that means you'd have to have at least 3 of these projectiles deployed in order to take out a non-flak jacket user. But again, the radius on that is actually quite impressive. Now, interestingly, when using the Prestige attachment, this changes several of the stats, and one of those stats is your splash damage range. And interestingly, our maximum splash damage range, where we're able to get a one-hit kill with an explosion, this goes from 1.5 meters up to roughly 2 meters. So we actually get a slightly better one-hit kill potential with that splash damage against a non-flak jacket user. Keep in mind the damage values are actually the same as the base ammo, it's just the ranges that are changed here. Speaking of range changes, the second splash damage radius, where we're dealing 60 damage, this is actually reduced from 3.6 meters down to 3.2 meters. And then the big change here is our maximum hit radius with splash damage goes from 7 meters all the way down to 4.5 meters. So while this does become more deadly up close for a one-hit kill potential with that explosion, by having a slightly larger radius there, we have a very noticeably smaller overall radius to our explosion, meaning we're less likely to be dealing any damage in the first place. And just to show how big of a change this is, here's a side-by-side to-scale comparison here with the base ammo versus the Prestige ammo. And this really goes to show, while you're gaining a little bit more potential with that one-hit kill radius, you're losing so much of your potential to even deal damage in the first place. So definitely a clear trade-off there. However, that's not the only thing the Prestige attachment does. So let's take a deeper look at this. We can see for the pros on this, you're also getting a faster projectile speed, an improvement to your detonation delay, and we get improved magazine capacity and reload quickness. And the only stated downside here is the fact that we can no longer stick our projectiles, which isn't always a downside. Sometimes you do want to bank a shot around a corner, for instance. But I would say more often than not, it's nice to have that precision where you can stick the explosive exactly where you want it. And you can set traps a little bit better, like sticking it to a ceiling, for instance, where people typically aren't going to be looking, compared to on the ground where it's much more easy to spot. In either case, let's start having a look at a deeper stat comparison here. When it comes to our rate of fire, this is actually the same for the base ammo and the Prestige ammo at roughly 82 rounds per minute. The projectile velocity, on the other hand, is a little bit better with the Prestige ammo. Based on my hand testing at least, by default, our projectile velocity is roughly 85 meters per second, whereas with the Prestige ammo, it's roughly 100 meters per second. Realistically, you're not going to notice too much of a difference here unless you're like trying to spam it at very long ranges, like across the map. Then, a very important stat with this is the minimum time it takes to detonate one of these. If you just want to fire it and have it explode as soon as possible, with the base ammo, it takes roughly 500 milliseconds, and based on my testing, it has to actually hit the surface before you can detonate as well. Whereas with the Prestige ammo, you can detonate this in 150 milliseconds, and you can airburst it as well. And that airbursting can be quite useful if you get your timing right. So if somebody's behind a piece of cover, you can actually fire this over or around that piece of cover, and if you get that timing just right and you airburst it just as it crosses that cover, you can ensure that they're in that maximum damage radius, and you can get that one-hit kill if they're not using Flak Jacket. Whereas with the base ammo, it might be a little trickier to ensure that you're getting that projectile landing around that piece of cover right where you need it to be so they're within that maximum damage radius. Additionally, if you have this launcher in your hands and you unexpectedly come across an enemy, it's nice to have that Prestige ammo because you can just fight back more effectively by firing in their direction and then just spamming that detonate as fast as you can. That'll give you a much better chance than with the base ammo, where you're stuck with that big delay before the explosion will even go off, and you'll very often be dead before you can even detonate it. And then finally, another very big difference here is our magazine capacity by default is just 4 rounds, whereas with the Prestige ammo, that increases it up to 8 rounds. And you can see we also get a larger reserve of ammo that we spawn in with. By default, we get 20 in reserve, and with the Prestige ammo, we get 24 in reserve. So it's going to be lasting you noticeably longer. And that's not to mention the fact that our reload time is improved. With the base ammo, we have to reload every round individually, and it will take 1 second to reload the first round and then 0.75 seconds for every additional round after that. Whereas with the Prestige ammo, you're reloading a box magazine, and therefore you just get 1 standard reload time here at 2.23 seconds for a non-empty reload. And so that's generally going to be superior for you unless you really just want to be topping off 1 or 2 rounds. So that's the basic comparison here, but next there's a couple other things I wanted to look at here, and the first one is the interaction against the trophy system, and it turns out the trophy system will be blocking the projectile with or without the Prestige attachment. Either way, the trophy system does counter this. And second, I did test this against several streaks, and it appears the damage you're dealing versus streaks is just not worth it. And especially for aerial streaks, it's kind of hard enough just to hit them consistently in the heat of the moment anyway. And as you can see, it takes so many shots in order to take a streak out. Again, with the base ammo or the Prestige ammo, it doesn't matter. It's just not worth wasting your time. You're actually better off just shooting bullets at the streak compared to trying to use this launcher. And there we have it. That's going to wrap it up for today's breakdown of the GDL Havoc. And when it comes to my thoughts on this, while I think it is an interesting addition to the game, I think it also can be a little bit frustrating because you have people setting traps with it. At the end of the day, though, if people are doing that, they're probably not playing at their full potential because they're sitting there waiting for you to run into their trap. And in the meantime, they don't have a regular gun in their hand to fight back. So if you get eyes on them, then you can often kill them pretty easily. Plus, Flak Jacket is a reasonably good counter against this as well. So if it's frustrating enough and you're not using Flak Jacket, well, just switch over to Flak Jacket, and this shouldn't be killing you nearly as often. And so I more so just see this as a change of pace, something you can do for fun on the side. I think generally it's not a particularly competitive option to be using, but I'm all for gameplay variety, and this definitely brings in some unique gameplay options that we didn't have before it was added. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you guys think of the GDL Havoc in those comments down below. And I'm curious to know, do you prefer using this in the standard mode where you can stick the projectiles wherever you want, or do you prefer that Prestige attachment so you can then airburst at people? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.